Hey everyone. Every business owner is always thinking about one thing. How do I protect what I've worked so hard to build? Well, today we're going to dig into a really powerful but kind of forgotten tool for doing just that, the business trust. Let's jump right in.
So let me ask you this, and it's a question every single entrepreneur has to face at some point. You pour your heart, your soul, everything into building a business, right? But is it actually set up to shield you from lawsuits, from judgments, from all the risks that are out there? This is where that strategic planning becomes, absolutely critical.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the usual ways people do business. Then we'll dive into that overlooked fourth option. We'll break down what makes a pure trust tick, talk about the 3 huge benefits, and finally, see how you can actually use it as a tool for your business.
All right, Section 1, 4 ways to do business. When you first start out, you've got this really big choice to make about the legal structure. And for most people, the list of options feels pretty short. And these are the ones everyone knows, right? The big 3, sole proprietorship, partnership, and the corporation. I mean, pretty much every business you can think of in the US is one of these 3. But is that the whole story? Is there another way?
Okay, so check this out. This data from the IRS, it's from 1987, but it tells such a fascinating story. You see millions, literally millions of tax returns for proprietorships and corporations, but look over at trusts. Just a tiny little sliver. It really shows you how rarely it was used as a business. I mean, we're talking about a seriously overlooked entity here.
So let's talk about it. Let's dive into that fourth option, the business trust. It's this structure that's actually surprisingly common in some circles, but most people, even seasoned business pros, don't really get what it is.
So at its core, what is a trust? It's really just a contract. That's it. You have one person, the creator, who hands over some property to a trustee. And that trustee's job, their legal duty, is to manage that property for the people who are supposed to benefit from it, the beneficiaries. It's a fundamental concept in law, pretty straightforward.
And this isn't some newfangled idea. No way. This thing has deep roots, going way back to concepts like the Massachusetts Trust. See, this structure was actually invented to get around state laws that didn't allow corporations for certain things. It just goes to show you, the trust has always been this super flexible tool for getting business done.
Now, this next point is absolutely crucial. You have to understand that not all trusts are created equal. There's a big bright line between a statutory trust, that's one created by a state law, and a common law trust. And the one we're really focusing on today is that second one, an entity that isn't created because the government gives you permission, but because you have a fundamental right to make a contract.
Okay, so how do we actually build this thing? To get all the benefits we're talking about, the trust has to be put together in a very, very specific way. The goal is to create what's called a pure trust.
All right, let's look at the blueprint. First, it has to be a non-grantor contract. What does that mean? It means you sell your assets to the trust in exchange for capital units. You don't just gift them. That's super important. Second, the trustee gets what's called absolute title, no fuzzy divided ownership. They own it, period. Third, you don't have traditional beneficiaries who can call the shots. Instead, you have capital unit holders, and their only right is to get distributions. All of these pieces work together to make sure the IRS doesn't look at it and say, hey, that's just a corporation in disguise.
And when you put all those pieces together just right, what you get is a pure trust. This is the specific vehicle that's designed to give you the most protection and the most flexibility.
Okay, so that's the what and the how, but now for the most important part, the why. Why on earth would you go through all the trouble of setting this up? Well, it really boils down to 3 massive benefits.
Benefit number 1, liability protection. I want you to think of it like building legal firewalls. If your business gets sued, the claim is limited only to the assets inside that one trust. It can't touch your personal savings, your house, nothing. You can even get more granular and put high-risk stuff like company trucks or heavy equipment into their own separate trusts. That way, if a truck gets in an accident, it doesn't take down the whole company.
Okay, benefit number 2 is all about smart tax management. Since the unit holders aren't technically running the business, the money they get from the trust might not be hit with self-employment taxes. That's a huge potential saving. And if the trust is set up to distribute all of its income each year, it can basically treat those payouts as a deduction. And what does that do? It helps you sidestep that dreaded double taxation that corporations get hit with on their dividend.
And third, estate planning. Man, this gets so much easier. Because the trust owns the assets, not you personally, they completely bypass the probate process.
You know, that long public and expensive court process after someone passes away. This means the business can just keep running without a hitch. And maybe just as important, all the details of your estate, they stay completely private, not part of some public record.
All right, to make this feel a bit more real, let's look at a real-world example. You've heard of Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul, right? Well, he apparently used a business trust to solve a huge legal headache. He wanted to own a newspaper and a TV station in the same city, but there were laws against that. So what did he do? He put the TV station into a trust. Legally, he didn't own it anymore, but his company, as the holder of the trust capital units, still got all the financial benefits and kept effective control. Pretty clever, right?
So, you might be wondering, how would this actually work for my business? Let's walk through a few practical examples.
The strategy really changes depending on your current setup. So if you're a sole proprietor or in a partnership, you could sell all your business assets into a trust. Bam, just like that, you've gotten rid of that unlimited personal liability. Now, for a corporation, the game's a little different. You might sell off your big-ticket assets, like the building or expensive equipment, to a separate trust, and then have your corporation lease them back. What does this do? It makes your operating company a much smaller target if it ever gets hit with a lawsuit.
And that really brings us to the single most important idea in all of this. If you remember one thing, remember this. The whole strategy is about one simple concept: separating your valuable assets from the day-to-day risks of running your business. That's it. It's about building firewalls to protect everything you've worked so hard for.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Is it possible that the ultimate shield for your business isn't found in some complicated government statute, but in something much more fundamental, the simple, powerful right to create a private contract? It's a pretty big idea to think about. Thanks so much for joining me today.